Ever scrolled through your favorite short form content app and found yourself chuckling at something unhealthy and yet somehow relatable? Ever considered stopping after knowing that something that you're doing can be labeled as bad? Has the thought, well, everyone is doing it, so why shouldn't I be, ever crossed your mind at some point? Let me hold your hand as I drag you through this journey with me into discovering what bad habits are, the role of social media, the effects it has on people, and what are the possible preventative measures you can take to lower the chances of you developing even more bad habits in the future. What we do shapes who we are. Habits are a settled or regular tendency or practice that all of us develop and do in our everyday lives, to the point where they basically become either a pattern of movement or muscle memory. In addition, they are both hard to manually develop and hard to manually remove. I would like to put some emphasis on the word manually because we tend to slowly develop habits over time in a subconscious and unnoticeable way. With the meaning of habits already established, what could bad habits mean, or what makes a bad habit? A habit only becomes bad when it continues or consistently produces negative outcomes or interfere with the person's physical, mental, emotional, or social well-being. It consists of a few things. Number one would be harmful consequences that affect several aspects of a person's life. The next one would be a lack of control. A bad habit continues to stay despite the person recognizing its negative effects. This lack of control over one's habit indicates that the action had been ingrained over long periods of time, with it not being resolved while it's still budding or developing. Next one would be short term gratification, long term harm. Bad habits develop because it is often carried with it an immediate reward, enforcing the behavior even further. This pleasurable reinforcement becomes painful in the long run for the amount of distress it can give. Finally, conflicts with values or goals. Because of one's tendency to move in accordance to a negative pattern of movement, they will still do the action despite what they want to achieve. For example, would be someone wanting to lose weight, but because of their habit of overeating, they eat more than what their goal requires. With the context of what a habit and a bad habit is established, let's move on to my next point, which is to explain or to bring into your attention that there are many bad habits that are being humorized, romanticized, and normalized. Let's put all of those three words under one umbrella term, which is glorification, in order for me to have an easy time explaining the glorification of bad habits on social media and its implications. This is a major cause of concern for me because the more time passes, the more prevalent they become. The more prevalent they become, the more it turns into a trend. The more it becomes a trend, the more it becomes widespread. And of course, it disappears after a few weeks to a month, but it gets replaced by another. Some examples of these bad habits are: 1. Bed rotting.
I am actually not interested in being the best version of myself today. I instead would like
Bed
to
rotting is a
improve the
trend where you
bedroom
just kind of
routine.
enjoy the time that you have with your bed.
For those who don't know, bed rotting is basically an action or making it seem like doing nothing productive and doing nothing but rot in your bed for a whole day or multiple days at a time is something that is healthy or good. Of course, nothing is bad about doing nothing for a whole day. However, repeated doing of these things could make it a habit, with a possibility of you resorting to it whenever you feel bad. All the while, there are certain projects in your life that has to be done, or an opportunity that you don't want to miss. But you end up missing it because you want to rot in your bed for an undetermined amount of time. It's being glorified to the point where the person is framing it as if it's something that you want others to do and you want others to be doing. And to be honest, by the look of the comments, it's working. You get your validation through the audience and likes, which incentivizes you to do it again. The people in the comments are noticed by other people that do the same and therefore reinforces it because they found a place where they are belonging, where they belong, acting as if That's their version of gratification, and therefore the cycle continues. Number 2, romanticizing illnesses.
One thing about me, I only fucking fluorescent lighting. I need to see absolutely everything. One
Hi, I'm Bunny.
Romanticizing illnesses such as autism, DID, anxiety, and the most common one being tics, and making it seem like that certain mental illness that you 100% have, sarcastically speaking, is number 1, dismissing the suffering of the people who truly experiences those, and number 2, you are making it look quirky, which gives the wrong impression to the people who both don't experience it or people who don't know about it, influencing how they view the people who truly experiences those things, which further advertises to dismiss them further because it makes it seem like they don't really need that much help. After all, you don't really seem to be suffering at all. If anything, you seem to be enjoying it. Being a red flag.
This program is brought to you by Jabuli Spicy Chicken. Mas masarap pag may red flag.
Being a red flag, or engaging in manipulative, promiscuous, or even abusive, sometimes a combination of all three, and labeling oneself as a red flag is basically a status symbol for attractiveness. Being manipulative hurts those that you are around, and even harms the relationships that you are currently in, be it friendship, romantic relationships, or even familial. Do I even need to explain why this habit is bad? Prolonged doing of these actions enforces a person to keep doing it further and further, glorifying it more and more, and glorifying this could influence those who are impressionable to do the same, especially if they're trying to figure out what to do in order for people to like them and be attracted to them, because let's be honest, being a teenager is a bitch, and sometimes we do radical fucking things in order for us to be noticed by people. Substance abuse.
Mag-inom na naman tayo. Kakainom lang natin ah.
Ay, gusto ko lang sabihin na walang rewind sa totoong buhay. Kaya piliin natin uminom ng uminom. Ano na, shot na!
Substance abuse. This clubbing culture that we have nowadays that came from the Western way of doing things or the Western way of being an adult is quite the bad habit. Making the action of consuming alcohol or drugs as a status symbol of being rebellious and edgy influences other people to do the same in order to fit in. Now, I don't have any problems of occasional drinking because it's fine in my eyes. However, if this had been further developed into a habit, i.e., something that someone does even outside of a social setting, it becomes something that people resort to when feeling down. This creates this reliance on substance in order to feel something, which reinforces the habit even more, making it harder and harder to quit for the person. What you consume consumes you. Social media, ever since I discovered the internet, has been a huge part of my life, and I'm very, very confident that you share the same predicament as me. Social media isn't bad per se, nor is it good, but it has the potential to be. It's a source of information, a source of news, updates, communication, entertainment, and free speech outlet. I would like to put emphasis on those two last words, entertainment and free speech outlet, because those two are the leading causes that amplify the normalization of certain behaviors, including the harmful ones through memes, influencers, trends disguised and lathered in cherry-topped by humor. This normalization through various types of influences can have a significant impact, especially for those who are easily swayed, influenced, and persuaded from multiple reasons, like maybe number one, they aren't aware that it's something that is negative. Number two, it could be something that it's trending and many people are doing it, so why shouldn't they follow? And therefore are swayed by either the fear of missing out or curiosity. Number three would be they look up to certain influencers and follow their footsteps no matter what it is, warping a person's perception of what's normal. And number four could also be that the habit that they continue to do feels pleasurable to them, so they don't want to stop it, normalizing it further and engraving it into their identity more and more. Now, the main culprit behind all this is not basically social media, but people's social media algorithms. According to an article titled How Do Social Media Algorithms Work by Clodagh O'Brien, she states that algorithms basically, in simple terms, filter out the most relevant to what the users want to see or what the algorithm thinks you want to see through multiple factors. But the one that I can see, or the factors that I can see that supports my claim on how algorithms work, is number one, how viral certain contents are. Number two, captions and hashtags. Three is relevance. Number four is geographical location. So the content that you get is something that you would understand in a cultural level. The next would be personal interest. And the next would be recency. But the final one is something that is the most important and the reason on why you keep seeing the things that you see. And it's because of user interactions, likes, comment, share, repost, etc. So be wary of the things that you like. Be wary of the things you comment and you repost. Basically, just be wary of the things that you consume on the internet because 100% of the time, it would be what always show up to you or on your For You page. So, to the people who complain that TikTok is only full of half-naked girls in bikinis dancing, you know what you're doing. You're not sneaky. The invisible hand of the marionette. Psychological explanations behind the actions. I'll try my best to explain the reason why social media and its algorithm has the power to influence behaviors or people's behaviors through presenting to you a short version of Albert Bandura's social learning theory. Albert Bandura's social learning theory basically states that people learn new behaviors through observations and imitations of others, meaning that with enough exposure to a certain action or stimuli, a person would have a high chance of replicating what they see. The next one would be is that Albert Bandura proposed two main ideas. The number one would be the mediating process, which occurs between stimuli and responses, and the next one would be behavior is learned from the environment through the process of observational learning. Now, let's tackle the mediating process. What this basically means is that there is a certain process that is followed before a certain action that one observes is imitated. Because it's not me see something, me do it, because why the fuck not? But instead it is me see it, me thinks if it's necessary. If it is necessary, then I will copy it. Then if it isn't, I won't. This mediating process occurs in between observing the behavior or stimulus and deciding if one should imitate it or not, which is the response. According to Albert Bandura, there are four mediational processes and each are crucial when it comes to the decision-making process of whether to copy a certain behavior or not. And these are: number one is attention. We see so many actions and behaviors in real life, and so many on the internet. However, most of them are not really worth our interest, which is why if something catches our attention, we deem it as something worth imitating, and that's we decide if we should replicate it or not. I would also like to add in the fact that people who see people being rewarded for certain actions make it even more likely for that person to replicate what they saw, which is basically vicarious reinforcement. The next one would be retention. After we see a certain action, and even if one replicates it instantly after viewing, we won't always be resorting to it because in order for a certain behavior to stay, it has to have a memory to refer to it in order for it to be replicated in a later time. After all, one could not replicate if one does not really remember. The next one would be motor reproduction. Now, the thing is, our body has certain limitations, and therefore, if we cannot do it, then we won't be able to replicate it. If we can, then we do. We are more likely to model our behaviors through people who are the same as us, because we can identify ourselves with them, making their behaviors relevant, attainable, and also there's a sense of relatability which adds to humor and the chances of replication. Number 4 would be motivation. If a person has enough will to do a certain behavior after weighing its pros and cons, they will highly likely do that action, especially even if that at the moment the pros outweigh the cons. Let's move on to Albert Bandura's second idea, which is observational learning. This is when we replicate those that we observe, but it isn't as simple as that, so lock in. This observational learning process involves people modeling after those who we are similar to or has a high status, knowledgeable, rewarding or nurturing people in our lives. Now, Albert Bandura identified three primary models of observational learning. The one would be the live model. It's basically observing a natural person behaving in a certain way, online or real life. Next one would be is verbal instruction model, which is listening to a detailed description of a certain behavior, then acting based on said description. And last one would be the symbolic model, or learning through media such as books, movies, or songs, or even online media, where these behaviors are shown. I would like to point out that sometimes these media show the possible outcome or output of these behaviors, which assist the weighing in of the people's pros and cons even more. The Trojan horse of normalization. Commercials, influencers, and memes all have one thing in common, and it's that they use humor in order to convey a desired message, with the addition of being relatable somewhere in there in the mix. Because of our inefficiency to deal with our emotions in a direct confrontational way, we often resort to humor to soften the blow of a certain event or occurrence in our life. Hence, why certain bad habits portrayed in a humorous way on the internet by social media influencers tends to resonate with us quite closely and deeply. I would also like to state or bring into attention a paper by Barbara Sanchez entitled Internet Memes and Desensitization. It states there that humor, especially dark humor, these are the ones that often glorifies bad habits, if exposed to it long enough and often enough, would seemingly lead someone to perceive the situations that are shown in those content as normal, which minimizes the seriousness of the matter, leading to desensitization of people for such situations or behaviors. This feeling of being desensitized to those types of situations will weaken a person's ability to recognize, challenge, resist those bad habits and terrible behaviors because desensitization lowers the barrier of someone's mind and makes it not a big deal for someone to copy those certain behavior. What I mean is that being exposed constantly to humorous videos and videos glorifying bad behavior leads a person to become desensitized to that certain behavior, increasing the risk of imitation. Because desensitized people are more likely to engage, share, and even recreate such content, amplifying its reach and enforcing the cycle of glorification through trends. Pause core, but the good type of pause. Honestly, no one can force anyone to remove a bad habit unless the person with that bad habit yearns to change, but until then, no one would be able to sway someone from stopping their bad habit or bad behavior. However, a person can stop themselves or prevent themselves from developing another bad habit. It is through self-reflection that we can stop oneself from develop further harmful behaviors, as well as being mindful of what one consumes on the internet. Through self-reflection, one would recognize what the self truly wants, and therefore understand the steps that they would need in order to achieve no matter what it is. Mindfulness is also needed and important because it enables someone to recognize what they are seeing is purely for entertainment and not something to be replicated. Both self-reflection and mindfulness also alters the way you perceive things, because bad habits being framed as something that is worth glorifying is a perception game, as mentioned earlier. You would only replicate something that you perceive something as positive or normal, and you won't if that portrayal of the bad habit, even in a humorous way, is seen as something that is bad. Now, that is why I do advertise that people should practice self reflection more as well as mindfulness in order to remove this epidemic of bad habits consuming us and that keeps popping up in our recommended or for you page in whatever social media app that we're using. Anyway, that's it for the video.